So I mentioned the whole thing with Jay, Lady, and Miss S, and how like Jay had let me share a storage unit with her, and how that went due to Miss S. But then just like stuff with the fact that apparently Jay had already told the place that she was homeless, and that she was I don't know if she went into detail about how she got stuck in this town because she ordered the wrong Greyhound ticket trying to go back to her land. But that ended up going pretty left, because what I did know is that they already knew that we were homeless, or at least that Jay was homeless, and I guess they assumed that she was like my mom or grandma or whatever. And that caused a lot of issues, and so I had got a new one near the other side of town, which was a good thing at first because I did have plans on being over here more. But anywho, so this morning I had went to the storage unit, which is another thing. If you go there like too early in the morning, especially if you already just look at a place and like you have stuff going on, I guess that's a red flag to them too. Then go in there too late at night, or like once it gets dark. But it's kind of still like, even what I said with the last one, it's like I wouldn't even want somebody trying to micromanage a storage unit that I'm paying for, because it defeats the purpose of having it and paying for it. For all that, I might as well just like set up a tent somewhere, or ask someone if I could leave my stuff like near their house, or just stash it somewhere. But the point of paying is for the more security and all of that. But anywho, I went there and I asked to use the bathroom, and then the manager dude was like, what's up with all this you have to use the bathroom stuff? And he asked me if I was living there. He talked about he always pays attention to people who come on foot and wear book bags, because those are the types of people that don't have houses and are going to try to live in the storage unit. That's why, honestly, I really just regret even getting in either. Well, I didn't pay for the first one, but I regret even getting this one. Like, I tried to get another one that I think was a little bit cheaper at first, but I wasn't really old enough, and I needed a driver's license, because due to insurance stuff, they want you to have a driver's license because it was a drive-in one. And it's like, I mean, the whole paying attention to people that come on foot thing, and even the backpack thing, I mean, it's a good thing that he's admitting how he really feels, because that's what I was worried about. But it's like, I have metabolic issues, so I have to use the bathroom really all the time. Even when I was living with relatives, I would always have to use the bathroom places, and it was really bad. Not when I was living with relatives, but it was really bad when I was living in places where they had like high homeless populations. They were used to homeless youth, because they automatically were eyeballing me, even when I was renting a room, because they just, in certain places where there's more homeless people, you just can't use the bathroom at any public places, even if you pay for something, because they're just worried about if you're homeless or not. And it's really unfortunate, because running all the way home or getting on the bus and going home to use the bathroom, especially when you have metabolic issues, and even just in general, isn't always an option. Like, I even remember seeing people who were traveling through towns, and they were like going different places, and they would just like take a stop in like a certain state or city and try to use the bathroom or get something to eat, and they would be mad in these types of places because they weren't able to. This was really common in the West Coast. Like, I even remember a point in time, as I mentioned pretty often, where like if you were traveling, you were driving to a different state, you could stop your car and like sleep in a parking lot for a couple hours, or even for like, for a couple hours. Like, I remember doing this one time, more recently, with my older neighbor sister and my two younger siblings. We had stopped in a parking lot somewhere for her to go to sleep, and then we were going to pick back up driving back to another state. But you can't even really do stuff like that anymore. Definitely not in areas with high homeless populations, because there's so much security everywhere looking for who looks homeless and all of that. And like I said in the Psalms videos, and even a lot of my recent videos, really, you're treated the same in every bad situation, and people have a new excuse every time. And it's like, well, I mean, what's even the point of like paying for something if you're not even really going to be able to use the place? that you're paying for. It kind of defeats the purpose. And then one of the bad things is that in homeless situations, it depends. But depending on like how your setup is, you may have to go to the storage place a lot, which I also feel caused issues with the last place. Other than the fact that I didn't know until recently that Jay had told me that she was homeless, but like you have to go there to pick up your sleeping bag, or at least I do. My sleeping bag, and I'm at night before. Wait a minute. So I'm like, my throat's dry. At night before, I go to sleep and then go there in the morning to put the stuff up, depending on like what all I'm about to do that day. So that way I'm not walking around with a bunch of stuff, looking homeless, and or just looking like I just got kicked out or I just ran away. Because that's like some people's first assumption. Their first assumption is that I just got kicked out or ran away. And I know like in areas like this, most people assume that I'm just way older than I actually am. They just assume that I'm like 30 or whatever. But for the people that don't assume that, they assume that I just got kicked out or I just left somewhere. And those are the people that are also typically sexual predators that will give me these rundowns about how it's my fault that I got kicked out, which is an assumption. And it's like people are very oblivious to foster care. They're very oblivious to the realities of foster care. Now, of course, I wasn't in foster care, but a lot of people are or were. And that is being homeless. And it's like people automatically assume you left somewhere or got kicked out, but like it doesn't really make a difference. But there's just like the foster kids who will also get those assumptions when they never had anywhere to go in the first place. But it's kind of like, I don't know, when you're more worried about trying to like prove yourself to people, which honestly has always been my situation just about. And I know that people, and even myself, will often talk about how it's not good to feel you have to prove yourself to people, but to be truthfully honest, as I've always said, even before the evidence channels, when what other people think about you decides whether you whether you live or die, whether you're locked up or free, it really does matter. That's why, honestly, I would say that if you don't really have anywhere to go and, like, do the things in your abuse situation or just being in foster care or whatever, oftentimes your best bet is to just blend in when you have to and just stay off the grid, because realistically, with all the extra barriers that are there in your abuse situation, then that come when you escape or get kicked out or you're dumped out, or you your placement ran out of time, so like you have to wait till foster care / CPS gives you another placement if they find one. So much barriers come up where like people feel some type of way about you because of your situation, in any situation you're in, homeless or not, to where it's kind of too hard to like fight stereotypes and fight discrimination to even be able to figure something out. And it doesn't really matter anyways, because I feel like with me personally, I was never materialistic, and I don't know, I just rather not really be constantly having to hide from people and all that stuff that goes along with all this. Not caring is honestly the best thing, and it's like, I even had somebody tell me recently about how, like, I'm doing a lot more than other people my age, and like how it's a good thing that I have all the certificates that I have that really don't even matter. And that's why like I just got rid of them. And then what else was it? It's like one person or a few people will tell me and other people stuff like that, but most people don't really care about that. Once you're seen as a castaway, you're seen as a castaway, and that's even in your abuse situation. Like, a lot of people will be like, yeah, you seem homeless and all that, and it looks like you have something going on, especially if you're younger, because one of the things about it is that people don't expect somebody my age to have a storage unit, and they don't expect somebody my age to have a car either. And so that's kind of the funny thing with the storage unit thing, but it's like, well, that also depends on the demographic you live in, but definitely not around here. People don't expect that. But what was I about to say? Oh yeah, like, I had someone tell me that was homeless for a while, even at 17, but they didn't consider themselves homeless because they were living with friends and couch surfing, but that is hidden homelessness. They were even homeless before 17, really. But anywho, They riskily work for the federal government again, and they were telling me that like they would be able to tell that I'm homeless because they can like pick up on the signs now since being in the environment. But it's like people say stuff like that, but my whole life people have always been able to tell that I had something going on and that I was in a bad situation with relatives and stuff. And that's like a common thing for all of us in these types of situations. Our situations were always red flags and very visible, and people always like could tell different stuff was going on. Like throughout my entire life, I've always had people feel some type of way about me wanting to work because, quote unquote, me wanting to work is like a red flag that something's going on, which honestly I don't really know why. I feel like that's like a Western infantilization, financial abuse mindset that people have, where people feel like wanting to be able to take care of yourself and wanting to work is like some type of red flag that you have something going on and you have to take care of yourself, which doesn't even really matter anyways because nobody's going to do anything, so you might as well be able to take care of yourself. That was always really, really annoying to me. I have a lot of mucus buildup, but that's like, it's kind of funny though, because when you're like, especially when you're living with relatives, even when you're not, but especially when you're living with relatives, wanting to work is like a red flag. But to many people, once you're like kicked out, dumped out, or you escape, is in their mind like you should be working, even if you really can't. But that kind of reminds me of something I forgot to say in the last video, tips for homeless people, and especially homeless youth and runaway and kicked out people and people who are in foster care, which every advice doesn't work for every situation. People should keep that in mind. But I totally forgot to mention that you may like, a lot of people are like really set on getting a job if they don't already have one before they run away or get kicked out, which if you're going to be reported as a missing person, you're not going to be able to work that job anymore. You're not going to be able to get one. But one of the things that I completely forgot to mention is that even if you have a dead set in your mind that once you get out here, or once you're done laying low and you reach whatever age, depending on if you have a situation where you don't have to run from your relatives for the rest of your life, you may want to get a job, but like, you're going to have to blend in. It's going to be a lot of discriminatory stuff with that as well, especially with like America/Babylon falling and going back into an open NAZIS or NAZIB system nation. There's a lot of discriminatory stuff when it comes to getting a job, but especially for homeless, if people know that, plus with the discriminatory stuff, people aren't going to want to hire you. Like, I noticed that a lot of runaways or people who are about to get kicked out or are kicked out have like this goal set in their mind to get a job, and I'm definitely not saying don't try, but when people know or feel like you're in a situation, they're not going to hire you. And there's also that, kind of like I'm pretty sure I mentioned in that last video, there's this girl who's 14 and she stays in Florida and she wanted to get a job, but they don't want to hire her because of her age. But I knew a girl who was in an abuse situation in Florida who was quote unquote white, and she was working full-time and a full-time student. That's not even legal. But the other girl who they don't want to hire, or who they hire then fire, she's a melanated person. And so stuff like that can happen. It also depends on the person. Like, some people will hire you under the table, some people won't. Stuff like that can happen. But it's better to be an entrepreneur anyways. But overall, really you should focus on learning survival skills. That's what everybody really should be doing, regardless of whether they're like in a bad situation or not. Everybody should really be doing that. So much stuff is about to happen anyways. You want to know how to get food yourself without surviving off the government. Because as I've always said, a lot of people say, I'm independent and I'm self-sufficient. If you work a job and you have to live off of money, and I'm not even talking about the whole going into a cashless society thing. Even that, well, that's going to cause issues too. But like, if you have to do all of that, you're really not self-sufficient. You still live off of the system and the matrix. And that's about to change so quickly, so fast. Most people aren't going to be ready for it, whether they're rich or not. But especially if you're not like one of the higher ups and you're not down with them boys, this is going to cause a lot of issues for you. Or they'll just take you out. Kind of reminds me of that whole star whacker thing. But I mean, shoot, not even just star whackers, because that's just like taking out people who are like actors. There's like rich whackers, where they just take out people who have money but aren't down with them boys, quote unquote. So realistically, people who run around saying they're self-deficient really aren't. In fact, something I could add on, without like going into a lot of details on the whole situation, is that, like for that Weldon thing, or really a lot of the trade things I mentioned in general, but more so the recent Weldon situation that I really shouldn't have been doing anyways, for a couple reasons. Like, that's another situation where I could really think about like how once people sense that you're in a situation, not only do they change and start treating you funny, but it's kind of like, it just causes a lot of issues because it also makes you a red flag. Like, especially in areas like where I'm at now, but really anywhere, like, when people realize that, like, you don't have any family or anything, and that you don't have any help, not only does it make them see you as like a castaway type person and like a red flag because you must have did something to somebody, or you left home, or you got kicked out. But also, one of the biggest things, especially what I've been talking about a lot lately with the Marine Kingdom agents, is that it's a sure sign that you're easy to sexually abuse in all types of ways, because they know that nobody's going to stop them, and also that you don't have anyone to tell if they are doing stuff to you. And so, like, if things got really bad, they know that nobody's going to notice you're gone, and there's nobody to come looking for you either, or to even report that, like, they haven't seen you in a while and they don't know what happened. It just makes you an easy target for a lot of things. But like, another thing is that, like, I think I said that a couple times. What was I saying? Oh yeah, the welding thing. So back to that. The main thing. So, like when I would be done welding, I wouldn't like be able to get a ride back, and I had already asked like about what time the bus stopped running and things like that, and somebody had said that the bus had already stopped running pretty much, and I was like, oh. And so then like the lead welding guy was like, so is somebody gonna come pick you up? And especially in places like this, people are first gonna ask about your mom, which, I mean, I've dealt with that a lot of times, especially living in like the South, and it was always really interesting because, like, for some years I lived with my dad, so people would always ask, well, where's your mom at, and when is your mom gonna come pick you up from school, and stuff like that. It would always be pretty annoying to me, and I was just like, yeah. And then of course the dude eventually found out that like I was homeless. It didn't take a long time because what was it? Oh yeah, I didn't have a place to stash my sleeping bag and mat. I keep it in like a plastic bag, but it's still like really noticeable. I would even say that even like the book bag I carry, it's definitely not big, but since it's like obviously like a waterproof one and people aren't really used to seeing like people with camping gear, even though it's not like anything big, that's still like something that people notice. And like the more homelessness is talked about, as more people become homeless, and the more like the media talks about it, the more people know what to look for when it comes to homeless people. Just like the storage unit dude said, he pays attention to people that have a book bag on and stuff like that. And I could definitely say that like if people didn't see me around school hours, and if I had like maybe another bag, then people who haven't seen me too much and don't like sense that something's going on would just think that like I just came from school or something like that. But There was something else I was gonna say. Oh yeah, like I noticed that throughout my life, or at least in elementary, I'll say, because I didn't go to anything but elementary really. When I was in elementary, people would often, I mean, obviously there was like obvious abuse, but people would notice things even more because like my dad was supposed to like come get me off the bus, and he typically wouldn't. There were times where he was supposed to come pick me up from school, and then he would forget. And like, it's the same red flags that people notice. Just kind of like how I said, people feel like being outside is the issue, when that has nothing. Well, I can't speak for everybody, but I know for me that's not the issue. It's being treated pretty much, still being treated bad. I mean, because I wasn't about to come out how I wanted it to. Still being treated bad, but also the biggest thing is not having any help with stuff. Like the same issues that I had before I was out here, the same issues I have now when there are some issues. And I mention that pretty often, like during the evidence channels, there would be situations that would go down where I would have to like sleep outside of libraries and sleep at bus stations and just get stuck places because I didn't have help getting anywhere, or not being able to go to job interviews or get to work, not just because of like having issues with transportation, especially with how the bus ran in that state. It was really confusing. It made no sense. But also because like I was going through infantilization, or more so financial abuse and sabotage that revolves around that, and I wasn't allowed to work. And it's actually kind of funny though, because it's like I've went through more ages where people using my age as an excuse to not hire me since being out here than I did with jobs like, well, I did go through some like when I was living with relatives, but it wasn't as bad. It's like, as I've told people before a lot of times throughout the years, anytime somebody doesn't want to hire you because of your age, that's really not the real reason. They'll probably turn around and hire an 8-year-old. There's another discriminatory reason that they don't want to hire you, but they don't want to tell you the real reason. But anyhow, that's why I learned at 12 that like entrepreneur type stuff was a lot better for many reasons. But I don't know though, I rather focus on foraging and like just being able to like survive in the wilderness, to be honest. But the iatrogenic metabolic issues and mitochondrial dysfunction has caused some issues with that. And it's like, I don't really have a lot of the gear I used to have anymore either, because it's like, when you go to different places, you have to like give stuff away and donate stuff and sell stuff, because even if it's stuff that you really need, it's too much stuff to just carry around. But anywho, another thing, aside from not having anybody to pick me up and it being a red flag, I went to this one job interview. This was a couple weeks ago, and it was at this restaurant place for breakfast, and the boss was talking about how it's 10-hour shifts, and he asked me which shift I would want to work, and I said I would want to work the night shift. And he was like, would your parents let you work the night shift? And I was just like, yeah. But I feel like when people ask stuff like that really can't sense that you're in like, that you have different stuff going on, even before I was like out here, like they can still tell that due to your response and like maybe how your body language changes, that you probably don't have parents or something or whatever. And like a lot of people aren't expecting me to have a car or any of that anyways, so they'll like they'll still ask me if I have a car or not, and they'll still ask me about my transportation, and like I just said that like my grandma's gonna bring me, or my dad, or whatever in the world. But to be truthfully honest, having to run around telling people anything and like making up alibis, it only lasts so long. And typically, due to the fact that people can just sense different things you have going on, and like even as I noticed, the demons and people often tell them your real situation, it really doesn't even work out trying to tell people stuff to keep people from like either treating you funny or like wanting to hurt you in different ways, because they see you as an easy target. And that's why I say, and I let people know that something to always keep in mind is that the same homeless people that are out here that are 40, 50, 70, 80, even the ones that are veterans, because they went into the military because they thought it was their only option to fix their situation, but it was just more MK Ultra and it made things worse. Those are the same people that have been out here getting kicked out or whatever in the world since they were 7, 8, 13, 14, 16, different ages. A lot of people do end up getting stuck or they end up in a cycle of homelessness. And one of the things about it that people also don't talk about that I mention often is that being in an unsafe living environment is hidden homeless. But even, like, aside from that, a lot of us grew up hidden homeless in many different forms. Like, actually, another thing I wanted to mention, the head welding dude, he was telling me about how I needed a permanent address. Of course, he started saying stuff like that after he found out about my situation. He even accused me of, like, wanting to steal his sandwich and different things like that he thought was funny that really wasn't funny, to be honest. And it's like, well, I mean, shoot, people that are inside of houses seem to have a lot more food insecurity anyways, because, like, they put all their money towards the bills, and so then they don't really have enough money for food. That's one of the many reasons, aside from the starvation abuse, why I say that once I became homeless, access to food actually became a lot easier. And also because I wasn't forced to be, like, up in the house hungry, and I could, like, go to, like, the food banks and stuff whenever I needed to. Especially, like, in the West Coast, there was a lot of places that made it just easier to, like, go get food, where I didn't have to, like, go in a food bank and be asked a lot of questions and have people, like, cornering me trying to find out all my business. But anyhow, the welding guy had told me I needed a permanent address, and he was saying that, but it's like, I mean, throughout my life, I can't really think of any time I had a permanent address. I can't really think of any time I lived anywhere more than, like, a year or two max. Like, crap, before I moved to the last place I lived at, before I had escaped my abuse situation, my mom only lived there for 4 months. So it's like, a lot of us grew up homeless, and I didn't even know that, as I mention all the time, I didn't know the full definition of homelessness till after I became full-blown homeless. Not that I like the term. People, like, bash and bang the term into my head, but I never did like calling myself that. Because as I always say, I always saw myself, like, living in the woods. But I do wish I would have ran away before, like, I became chronically ill. If I would have ran away before I developed the metabolic issues, a lot of things would be, like, easier in a lot of ways. But, what was I gonna say? Yeah, I don't know what I was last saying. I got sidetracked and started looking at something else. But, anyhow, nobody would ever come to, like, my parents and say something like that, because, for one, they're quote-unquote grown. But it's like people will say stuff like that to me because, as I always mention, well, no, as I was told by people before, I mention really often, but I was told this by people. I even remember that once my quote-unquote mom told me something kind of similar, and it's that people, when you're younger, people feel like they can tell you anything and, like, do and say anything. And just like how my mom kind of once said that, like, some people rather, sometimes places want more rowdy and problematic people around, something like that. Kind of like an example I've been thinking of a lot. People will, like, approach me and say stuff about homeless people, but they're not going to approach the person that's walking around talking to themselves with, well, I was going to say with, like, a machete in their hand, but I won't even throw all that in there. They're not going to, like, approach the dude who's walking around talking to himself because they're going to be scared to approach him sometimes, because people will sometimes be scared to approach people like that, but then sometimes they'll, like, argue with the person because, quote unquote, they're healthy minded, but really they had the same issues as the person that they're arguing with, and talk junk about and call, quote unquote, crazy. Because if they're going to argue with somebody who's accusing them of working with, I don't know, the CIA to make sure that they don't get a seafood dinner or something. I don't know, I can't think of a good example, but if they'll argue with that person, they have whatever they say that person has. That's how I feel about it. People claim that they're quote-unquote healthy, whatever that means. But either way, people are going to approach that person, but they'll approach somebody like me because they feel like I'm an easy target to say whatever to, because regardless of what they may say about how they think my state of mind is, they're not scared to approach me because I'm not a risk. Kind of like in this one documentary that I've watched a couple times throughout the years, since like way before I was out here. Like, I think even before I was double digits, I watched this one documentary about, I think it was about homeless people in Romania, and there was like this one boy who was living in a tunnel. I think it was that documentary, which is definitely in my childhood homelessness playlist, but I don't remember what it was called. I think it was Mobb people or sewer people or something. But there was this one dude who walked around with like bells or trash or something attached to like his ankles, and it would like make a lot of noise when he walked around. And someone asked him about why he does that, and he says he does it so people will think he's crazy, so they won't mess with him. And honestly, that's what I need to do, other than like just trying my best to not be seen and to not be in like mainstream society and to like stay in the forest or something. I need to just start walking around talking to myself. I was going to say flipping my hair with on my finger like this one dude was doing, that people don't approach, when I was in New Orleans. But honestly, I don't even think that'll work because I forgot I had to cut all my hair off. Because due to like different stuff, I've always had like dandruff issues, and I wasn't really, it just was hard to get rid of, well, impossible to get rid of. I had it my whole life, like dandruff, and then I don't really know how to do it that well either. Like, I started doing 2-strand twists, but I'm not really always able to like redo them. There's just a lot of issues with that, so I just had to cut it off. So I guess I can't do that, but I don't know. I guess maybe I could walk around talking to myself while punching the air or something. But it's like, I don't even want to get in like the hang, not even in the hang. I don't want to get used to doing stuff like that to where like I don't know, I completely split off and then I start doing it and can't help it. But I feel like honestly, if I started doing that, I would deal with like a little less bull crap, but I would still like get harassed by police, and people would still harass me, but certain people wouldn't do some of the things that they do if I did walk around doing that. But anywho, it's like I never really wanted to be a part of the Matrix. I never was, and I don't really want to like have these standards hung over my head by people that wouldn't even be hung over my head if I had a family to live with. Like, for example, if you're a homeless 16-year-old, another 16-year-old is going to make fun of you and tell you that you need a job as if that would help you to get a place anyways. But if you're a 16-year-old who's living with family, people won't like expect that out of you, which I've never not liked working jobs, but like some people don't, because as I mentioned, apparently it's a red flag when younger people want to work a job, which I feel is really discriminatory and involves around ageism and even some racial stuff. But anywho, it's like people would either expect you to be in school, or they just expect you to like be doing quote unquote kid stuff. But people hold different things over your head when you're seen differently or in different situations. Although I'm not gonna lie, I do feel like me being smear campaign all over the internet doesn't help with getting jobs. But like, it's kind of funny though, because I forgot about it for a couple months, and I remembered, oh yeah, that is there. And it was behind something that happened where I think that like these people may have like Googled me, but it's kind of whatever though. And that's why, unless I have to, I never tell people my real name or any of that. But yeah, it's like, I know this may sound depressing, but I'm just kind of constantly reminded that I don't really want or need to focus on things that I never really had plans on focusing on. Because it's like, for one, people hold you at weird, crazy standards in certain situations, when your situation is visible anyways. And it's really weird how people are, but it's like, I just wanted to forage and stuff. But I think what happens is that every once in a while I do start thinking about like working again and stuff. But it's like then I remember that like I should have just kept focusing on foraging and learning survival skills, which I've been saying for years since before I came out here. Even everybody should be learning that, but people are in la la land. In fact, earlier today, I had this memory of this conversation I had with this lady from Malaysia, and we were talking. This was when I was 14 though, and she was like, you know, the things that I notice and things that you tell me and talk about just reminds me that most people in America are living in their own fantasy land that they made in their own head. And that's exactly what I've been saying. People lie to themselves to be able to go to sleep at night, but overall, people are all living in their own reality. And the more you know about reality and how things really are, the more you're going to get called delusional. And the Delulu term, which is a part of AAVE, but of course AAVE keeps getting called Gen Z slang because just like with the whole sus thing in Among Us, and even how the white liberals and the white conservatives have changed the meaning of the word woke, African American vernacular English keeps getting repurposed and hijacked and labeled off as stupid Gen Z slang. But overall, the more you know what's really going on, the more you're gonna be called delusional, or maybe bare minimum depressing. You'll get called a Debbie Downer. Like the mandated reporters, quote unquote, would call me for asking for help. I was a Debbie Downer. But either way, it's like none of that stuff even really matters. And honestly, people are gonna start to find that out sooner than later. Just like how lower level Caucasoids are slowly finding out that the real white supremacists at the top don't like them. It never did. They're slowly finding out. If you don't know how to start a fire, which I'm still not that good at. I know a lot of people that are good at it. Especially when I was in more nomadic vagabond travel communities with people that even had came from Europe, and they would come to the US to travel and stuff like that. When I was around those types of people pretty often, they all were good at starting fires, but a lot of people, they can't even start a fire. They can't even start a fire with a fire starter. And like I said, I'm not that good at it either, but that's what I should be focused on. Instead of letting people insult me into focusing on things that I always knew since day one weren't important. And when I say day one, I mean day one, not since being out here. I mean day one. Because as I always say, I always saw myself living in the woods and mouthed at the daydreams right before the tribulation took off. Since I was 6, I would just be staring at the ceiling, laying down on the carpet, thinking about that, or mouthed at the daydreaming about that. And that's what I should really be focused on. Because I don't like to focus on stuff that isn't real anyways. It's kind of especially if you start off with an abusive family system, and especially if you start off in the cash for kids system and go through the human cash cow systems, you're constantly being made to feel like you have to prove something to somebody. Something that you'll never be able to prove because everybody already knows everything. Everyone already knows that what I'm saying is right. They just don't want to believe it. They don't want to believe it because they want to be able to go to sleep at night, or because they're perpetrators themselves, or somehow they profit off these systems, or they just don't care because they have never had to be in these types of situations or go through those things themselves, so they don't care about who's being trafficked and different things like that because it doesn't pertain to them and it doesn't affect them. Which goes back to the whole la la land, or how every American, or most Americans, are living in their own fantasy land. Either way, I'd rather focus on the real important things. The things that, I'd rather be focused on in general. I'd really rather be focused on things I like doing. I'd rather, be at the skate park anyways than, being around people that are insulting me. I'd rather be at the skate park. Or, I'm trying to think about where else. In the mountains. I like the mountains. I like the desert too, but I don't like the heat. And it's like I just feel better in nature, and I feel better when I'm able to like maintain my health, that I'm not ripping and running, trying to do the quote unquote normal thing, even though I know that I'm one of the many not normal people, as I've always had beaten in my head. So it's like, shoot. Okay, I'm gonna edit this into the beginning because I remember now. What I was thinking about was the whole thing where, like, for example, if you go to the store by yourself to get groceries or whatever to carry them back to your campsite, and somebody sees you, especially if you're younger, but even if you're just like a woman with a boy or a girl, sexual predators or other predatory people may see you, and then they'll try yourself quote unquote helping you, and they'll harass you and stuff, and like stuff like that. If people see you having to carry a lot of stuff by yourself, they automatically assume you must not have anybody, or you're in a situation quote unquote. So this goes into the thing I mention all the time. In every quote unquote unideal or bad situation, there's always a predatory person that comes, and people always have things to say, and they're always going to try stuff. For example, the guy may approach you and say you look like you need a boyfriend or stuff like that, and they'll try to get you into their car to kidnap you, or they'll try to talk you into a relationship quote unquote, stuff like that. People may just assume that I have like a single mom or something who doesn't have a car, or I live with my grandma or whatever, and that's why I would have to carry a whole bunch of groceries by myself. But it leads to predatory people seeing me and feeling like I'm an easy, vulnerable person. People talk about the signs that someone's homeless, but realistically, most of us always had those signs. And I was thinking about like how a lot of things throughout my life were just signs that things were going on, the usual stuff. Nobody really cares anyways, but it's like the same signs are always there. Oh yeah, I think I remember now, actually. So I was thinking about how I had mentioned that the same issues that were the issues the same things that were the issues before I was out here are the same things that are issues now, which is not having help, because of course the breakdown in the family system is what leads to the destruction of societies and all that. Well, aside from like the society turning away from or never being for the Most High, and then everything goes downhill from there. And then the breakdown in the family systems and all that stuff. So, anywho, I was thinking about how, like, for example, I mentioned the whole thing with the financial abuse and infantilization, I'm pretty sure. But another thing with that and not having help is like, so, for example, if I have a job, I'll have to like sleep outside of that job, or well, maybe not outside, that'll probably be too visible, but I'd have to sleep near it to be able to get there, or even not even be able to get there in the morning. That depends on what time I have to go back, really, because I have no way back to wherever my camp spot may be, so I just have to sleep near the job and then get on the bus in the morning, then try to go somewhere to shower, and then have to stash my stuff and repeat that cycle. And it's like, that can often cause a lot of issues. Okay, I had to cross the street and burp at the same time, so that can cause a lot of issues, and that's one example I thought of earlier. Or like, I don't know, I can't really think of anything else right now. So like, having to sleep outside of jobs, if it's even possible, or near them, if you can find a spot where you don't end up going to jail or something. That's one thing that comes behind not having any help. And I mean, things like transportation, as I already mentioned, I'm pretty sure were issues, even in my previous situation. And it's like, the things that people try to make the issue aren't the issue. From the Caucasian addict projection to the mental illness excuse, or, well, yeah, I guess I could say excuse, a way to like, it's another thing that's used to hop around the real issues. And me personally, I don't even like the homeless term, but after a while it gets beat onto you until you start using it. And it's also really unfortunate. People really always want to lump somebody into a category because for somebody to be up, someone has to be down. Which reminds me of the video I was supposed to make like months ago about reverse eugenics. And I was going to use this song from this movie called Dear Dumb Diary. And it's called Perfect People of... Wait a minute, hold up. Perfect People of the World, You've Got to Go. It made me think about this thing I've been thinking about called reverse eugenics. Because the reality is that human beings are inherently NAZIs and eugenicists and genocidal and different things like that. It's all a part of pride and ego. And another thing about it is that when it comes to being in the Matrix, especially once the beast system is really rolled out and the mark is rolled out, you're not going to be able to straddle the fence. You're going to have to pick a side. And that's what I'm thinking about a lot now since I've been out here. Even before, but especially since I've been out here, because it's like, realistically, trying to straddle the fence, especially once you're out here, really doesn't work. Like, for example, you run away or get kicked out of your foster care, or you're just a missing person. You can't get food stamps under 18. You're not going to be able to get them if you're a missing person. Once things really change, it's going to be even harder to get. Anywho, you can't get them under 18, but they're about to change it to where younger people can't get it in general. And some other stuff with that. Oh yeah, you can't get it if you don't have vital records or an address. But some people who are out here, honestly not a lot, but some people who are out here, they try to get them or they want to get them, but they don't qualify because they have a job or something else. And what point am I getting at? Oh yeah, like not having vital records or not having an address is an issue for a lot of people. And so it's like trying to like get things like government assistance or even trying to get a job and deal with the different discriminatory stuff from racial stuff to ageism with younger people and older people. Because if they feel like you're too old, they're going to act funny too. To people feeling some type of way about you because you're homeless or because of how your hair looks, what your name is, how you talk, stuff like that. So like anything that revolves around not really being self-sufficient, surviving off the matrix systems, from jobs to government assistance to whatever else I can't think of right now, even schools, I think. Yeah, even schools. So like all of that stuff is trying to straddle the fence. I feel like if you're in the matrix and you're up in the matrix systems, you should still try to learn wilderness survival anyways. Because like people are kind of oblivious to how far in the Revelations in the what else is it? Revelations in the trumpets that we're into. Did that even come out right? People are not aware of how far into that we are. Hopefully that came out right now, because I kind of forgot what I had already said. And it's like, the love of many is gonna grow cold. Well, I mean, it's been growing cold. And people are focused on everything else, and they'll try to do things like they do to me and plenty of other people, where they try to like make you feel bad, and they'll talk junk about you, about how your parents don't love you, and how you're a bum, or you're not a millionaire. But it's so annoying though, because I never really did care about any of that stuff. But they'll try to like beat you down and even throw you in jail and unalive you, which is only going to get worse once the people in the NWO religion start trying to take out the people who really do want to seek Yahweh's truth. And point is, this is going to be all over the place. People just want you to focus on the wrong things. They don't want you to focus on Yahweh or the Bible or the prophecies that are unfolding, or even all the stuff that's about to happen. That's about to make everybody realize that the things that they thought they could brag about aren't going to matter. Because, like, for example, universal income in the B system. That means that, especially once America goes more regime-like, you're not going to be able to just make the amount of money you want to make. You will own nothing and be happy. So people aren't going to be able to brag about that stuff anyways, unless they're like the 1% and they're in those bloodline families and they're down with them boys. Which you also still have to be down with them boys, because a lot of people are related to like Mark Zuckerberg and Beyonce, but if they're not down with them boys, then it doesn't matter. So it's like they want you to focus on the wrong things, but you really can't straddle the fence. You can't be halfway in the matrix and halfway out of it. If you're not in it, you are never in it, and you can't figure out how to wiggle your way in, this isn't coming out right, then it's probably not meant for you anyways, and it doesn't really matter in the end. None of the things that people want you to think matter. And I'm not gonna lie, I think one of the issues with me, in the whole straddling the fence thing is that, as I mentioned before, since I was 6 to 8, especially then, I wanted to be an anonymous hacker. And there was just a lot of stuff with that I got pretty sabotaged around. There was a lot of things. But it's like, one of the things about escaping my previous situation is that now it's my chance to try to do those things without the sabotage. But still, with the situation, it doesn't really make it easier, because it's like the cops, they're constantly running me out of states and giving all their threats and different stuff like that, and then not really having anywhere to do things and to put stuff can cause issues. That's another reason why I want to get back to a spot where like I can have a tent set up again. In fact, I'm thinking about making a video about my old spot, because I was looking at my Google photo highlights, and once again it showed me my old mountain spot, another spot I used to be in. And honestly, I miss being in spots like that and just being able to have my own peace and not have to worry about cops and stuff going missing. I mean, the cops did run me out of Santa Cruz, but I was gonna have to leave the West Coast anyway due to my dream about the coming earthquake tsunami. But it's still like, when you're in spots like that and you're not seen, you're not somewhere where you're like gonna be looked for, I just want to be off somewhere where no one can find me, in the middle of nowhere. That's what I really want. But overall, it's like I sometimes think about, like, what if I do build like a good project again, because I've always liked building stuff, and like I sell that, but it's like I don't really want to straddle the fence either. And that's one of the things about it. It's like there's really no point in straddling the fence, because all of it is about having something to prove, especially when it comes to like my previous situation and now. And it's like, I don't know, people are never gonna care. People are always gonna treat you funny. It's no point in feeling like there's something to prove to somebody. People are still gonna want to kill and rape and molest you anyway, so oh well. And it's like, I don't know what else to say about it. Because to be truthfully honest, preserving my safety and health and happiness is like gonna be one of the things that really matters. And listening to people's insults is not helpful. But that's one of the things that's going to happen a lot in cities. It's happening to hear people's 2 cents. And that's why there's not really a point in being in cities. But like, I don't have any money to go anywhere else, and that's the thing. I didn't want to like do anything else until I got some money, especially because it's gonna like be cold, which also means that I'm probably not gonna be able to go to the places that I would really want to go to camp, because it's like, I don't know, the thing with like gear and having to like give stuff away and sell stuff every time you go somewhere, because it's gonna be too much stuff to take with you. Especially with me, because due to like metabolic issues and stuff, I'm really not that strong, so I can't carry that much stuff. I can't even carry that much stuff as like most people can, which is why like some people have those big travel packs where like you can hook a tent onto it and a sleeping bag and a mat and then put a whole bunch of stuff in it. I couldn't even carry 2% of what people put in bags like that. But it's kind of like, it defeats the purpose of like buying stuff that I know I'm going to need anyways, but I have to give it away because I can't carry it, but I still need it. Like with my shovel, for example. But I'm really focused on the next time I go somewhere just having like the clothes on my back and a sleeping bag and a mat. But typically what I always tell people is try to have one pair of clothes for when it's cold and one for when it's hot. But also wearing layers, which is needed right now in a lot of places. It was cold 2 nights here, but then it got hot again, so I don't know what in the world. But it's still, like, I don't know what else to say about it. I just don't want to straddle the fence, and I don't really want anyone to like make me feel like I have to when it doesn't work and it's not realistic, nor does it really matter. And as I always say, I've never been materialistic. It's like, not only do I not want to do it because it just doesn't work and it's like it screws your head and health up, but it's like people want to insult you into trying to straddle the fence to try to get you to chase something that they're chasing that is never real, that they'll never achieve. And I don't really want to do all that. And it's like, shoot, I don't even know if I could really consider myself straddling the fence, because I don't even think I was ever on the fence. I think I'm like 300 miles away from the fence, and the fence is like 500 feet tall or something. So I don't even know. I can't even say I'm really straddling it. I don't think I've ever touched the fence in my life. But people want me to feel like I have to and I need to and I can. But none of that's really that true. Like, honestly, I learned that way back in my previous situation. I'm not even talking about the sabotage and stuff. I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying, like, in general, from, like, the people around me, the things that I've always studied and researched, I've learned that, like, it just is what it is, pretty much. And it's like, yeah, there's people that have, like, gotten to, like, the top of the fence. And I'm not talking about industry people and industry plants and puppets. I mean real people that are, like, self-made, that, have their own businesses and whatever. But they're going to start getting taken out anyway, so that doesn't really matter all that much. And, what else was it? Something else I was going to say. Crap, wait a minute. Oh yeah, and then like the smart ones are leaving the US anyways before things hit the fan. Which that's another thing too. Along with me always seeing myself in maladaptive daydreams, escaping my abuse situation before the tribulation took off, I always saw myself escaping the country too before things got bad here. I've been forgetting about that part. But either way, it's like, I don't know. And then, like, with health stuff, like, it's a miracle that I survived in my previous situation with all the gaslighting I got about my health. And it's a miracle that I'd get up and, wake up any day, even now, with, like, the iatrogenic metabolic issues and mitochondrial dysfunction. But it's like, even with that stuff, I think I should focus more on, like, just living life and doing things I should have always been able to do. Because, like, one of the things that I feel happens to a lot of people once they get out here, especially if they're, like, in a decent enough situation, is a little bit of regression. But I don't even think it's really regression. Even though some people, especially sexual predators, will try to make me feel like I'm a grown ASS woman, quote unquote. Realistically, I think that once you get out here and you feel safe enough to be able to do things you should have always been able to do, then you start wanting to do them. So, like, for example, I'd rather, like, go to the skate park, and I'd rather try to be around people my age, even though, like, I've always been nervous around them, which got worse due to different things. But I'd rather be around people my age than be around all the sexual predators that I'm around on a daily basis and surrounded by. But yeah, so there's that as well. But then it's like when you're seen as like that person who's in that situation, you're not really wanted or allowed in certain environments, even if you should be, which I was kind of trying to mention in that last video where I tried to talk more about the many reasons why some people may kind of be forced to be around homosexual predators and stuff like that, because due to their situation, they're not seen the same as like people their age or really of any age that have parents and a family. Even if it's not a good one, they're just still with them. Because you're seen a lot different once you're like full-blown visibly on your own, even though you were on your own in your abuse situation as well. But people get weirder once you're like full-blown visibly on your own. But as I've said my life, regardless of what I do or don't do, I'm in trouble.